Hello everyone, Ryan here. So, Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I read this during the month of March as part of Classics Clique Book Club, which started by fellow booktuber Roya Reads. And if you'd like to check it out, I'll provide a link down below where you can check out the book club that Roya started. And if you want to join, you can join. So yeah, as far as the Catcher in the Rye goes, this was my first time rereading it. I believe the first time I read it, I want to say it was almost 10 years ago. But actually before that, I do recall in high school, I'm not exactly sure, I want to say maybe like 9th or 10th grade, in an English class, we read it, or we were supposed to read it, or like we read like a portion of it or something. But I do remember the first time I actually read it all the way through was definitely no more than about 9 or 10 years ago. And I will admit, the first time I read it, it definitely blew me away because, originally I thought it was because, I don't know, I think maybe because I was like at this point in my life where, because I had already graduated high school and then, I graduated high school in 2002, and then for a while I floated around and did a lot of different things, odd jobs and whatnot, and went back to school a couple times, and I guess it was a point in which I was feeling pretty frustrated, and I don't know why. Like, I just one day, I remember I took a drive. I went to, I think it was Target, yeah. Because I didn't want to drive anywhere too far, so I went into a Target store. And at Target, they always have, they have a book section, and sometimes they have really interesting books there for sale, sometimes they don't. But so then on this particular day, there was a copy of Catcher in the Rye, and it was on sale, I think, for like $4 or $5. And I picked it up, and I remember I read the first paragraph, and I was hooked right away. So I got it and then went back home, and I read it, I want to say in like a day. It took me no more than a solid 24 hours, though obviously I took breaks here and there to eat and take a couple of naps. And and then, so that was the first time I read it. This time reading it, I was able to pay a lot more attention to the different details, and I was actually kind of surprised by the different details in it, which I know that I definitely missed the first time I read it. And for like one thing, which, by the way, I'm not going to reveal any kind of, I don't want this to be a spoiler kind of review, and even though I'm sure a lot of people have read The Catcher in the Rye, but still, I don't want there to be any spoilers, really. And also, too, like, I want to address different things that I feel not everyone is addressing when it comes to reviewing The Catcher in the Rye, such as, first off, to me, I got the impression like there was different parts during different chapters in this that, well, mostly in the beginning of the book, in which Holden Caulfield, to me, came off as like, it was almost as if he was giving out subtle hints. Well, actually, to me, not so subtle hints that he may have been gay or, in fact, bisexual. Either that or he was just, it's just his way of like messing with himself, or because there's certain points where like there's like this one other guy at his school, because he was, I guess, supposedly attending this private school or boarding school. Boarding private, I don't know. I never went to a private school or boarding school, so I don't know, the exact differences. But anyway, so this other student, fellow classmate or whatever, name of Strad Later or Strad Ladder, I don't know. I think that was him. But anyway, so this other kid, there was many times where like Holden Caulfield, he commented on the fact that he liked this other kid's body, like he liked how he looked. Like he would say something to the effect of, he's got a damn good body, and I mean, to himself internally, but he said it more than once, or rather he thought it more than once, more than a couple times. So, yeah, I don't know if that's supposed to be him just, if he was saying it in a sarcastic kind of way, or I don't, because I mean, that's the other thing too, like I felt like there were a lot of points in this in which I couldn't really tell if Holden Caulfield was being sarcastic or if he was just saying something, or rather thinking something, just because, I mean, he was like stuck in a certain moment and he felt a certain way, and it was just kind of like, it's more like, just whatever thought pops into his head. I guess that would make sense. I guess overall that's what I got from Holden Caulfield, and where it's like he just allowed all these thoughts to pop into his head, no matter what they were, even if they didn't make sense, even if they weren't connected, and pretty much like a kind of like stream of consciousness type of thing. And I definitely didn't pick up on that the first time I read it. This time I did. I picked up on it a lot more, and so I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's how it seemed to me. Like if either he was being sarcastic when it came to certain things, certain thoughts he had, or he wasn't being sarcastic and say, he really did think that this particular fellow student, he might have really, really found him attractive. So, and given that this was published, I want to say sometime in the 50s or 40s. I think 40s, yeah. Obviously back then, if people were gay, they were shunned a lot more by society. And, again, in a way, it kind of reminds me of The Great Gatsby, which was another thing. I listened to the audiobook of The Great Gatsby last month, and I didn't really pick up on a lot of different things, not until afterwards, and I really thought about it, and because I thought to myself, I don't think he's that great at all. But then it turned out that, the narrator, that Nick Carraway guy or whatever, that he had like some kind of crush on Gatsby or something like that. So, and then when I thought about that, then it made sense. And then I thought, oh, okay. So that's why he's considered to be great, or at least, according to that one character, the narrator. And, because I mean, there was a time when, in literature, I guess, different writers, if they happen to be gay or bisexual, or even if, I guess, if they have thoughts that were, back then were considered outside the norm, that weren't considered socially acceptable, in the different things that they would write, the different novels they would write, or stories, or even poems, they made sure, I guess, to mask, whatever details that may have alluded to the fact that the author was, kind of subtly trying to say that that he or she was gay, or bisexual. And so yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm reaching too far into that. Maybe I'm interpreting it in the wrong way. I'm open to that. I'm open to interpreting things wrong. But that's how it came off to me, as far as Holden Caulfield saying to himself, commenting that, he felt like this other fellow student had a great body, a really great body. And I mean, I don't know, let me know if you read it, if you interpret it, how you interpreted that part of the book, because I'd like to know. As so, and then as far as other aspects of the novel, I do admit there was, I want to say maybe like towards the latter half of the novel, I did start to feel like Holden Caulfield was starting to come off as a whiny brat. But I mean, given the situation he was in, even though, yeah, I mean, obviously if you compare it to like a lot of things that other kids have experienced, I mean, even back then in the 40s and 50s, since this was published in the 40s, and back then, if you were to compare like the life of someone like Holden Caulfield, who was essentially like, I guess, yeah, pretty much like a spoiled rich kid, you compare his life to, say, the life of another kid who grew up with very little opportunities, or rather no opportunities at all, then yeah, he does come off as a spoiled rich kid. So, no secret there. But at the same time, I did also feel like, hey, he has the right to complain. He has the right to complain about his life, and just like the rest of us do. I mean, just like for most of us, I know, most of us, if we're having a bad day, we had a bad day at work, come home and end up having to deal with some extra stress at home, such as, I don't know, your wife leaves you, or your kids are acting crazy again. And then, you complain. Naturally, you complain, about your own situation. And that's how I feel that's pretty much what Holden Caulfield did in this novel. Just, in his own way, kind of in his own way, but also not really in his own way, because it's still like a universal thing, complaining about one's life is very universal. Granted, it can get to the point where it becomes counterproductive, but it's still very universal. So, yeah. I mean, I can understand why, there's a lot of people who say they don't like the Catcher in the Rye, mostly because, like, it seems like usually they'll say that, they don't like that Holden Caulfield, he just comes off as a whiny brat, spoiled rich kid, and, I can see where they're coming from with that. But yeah, I mean, as far as the way I interpreted that, at least that aspects of the novel, and just came off as universal to me. I don't know how else to say it, or how else to put it. So, and as far as like other things, I mean, there's another thing too that kind of got to me a little bit. Like, there's a whole thing where like Holden Caulfield kept asking different people about if they knew where the ducks went in the winter, because there's like a pond somewhere, and of course usually during the warm weather there's a lot of ducks swimming in the pond, but then during the winter they fly away, and he wanted to know where they fly away to. And I didn't like that, like pretty much every adult he asked, like they seemed really pissed off that he would ask them that. And it didn't make sense to me. Like I don't know if it was meant to like point out the ignorance of adults or just the ignorance of people in general. I don't know, but like, yeah, it got to me, like, because he like asked a cab driver, he asked, I believe, some guy in the park, and if they knew where the ducks went during the winter. And it was like either they would try to change the subject, or they would get really pissed off, or like, or Holden would ask him more than twice, I believe. And they actually got pissed off because he asked him about that. I don't understand that, Maybe it is, in fact, one of those things used to point out the ignorance of people. I don't know, or just the fact that, like, most people don't pay attention to such things, and they don't really care about such things. They care more about, I don't know, other stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how else to interpret that. So let me know what you think about that part, if you read it, or not. Or I don't really consider that to be a spoiler, really. And then another thing too, like I liked his interaction with his little sister Phoebe. She seemed to like really be the only person that actually cared enough to listen to what Holden had to say about certain things, and at least that's how it came off to me. And I kind of wish that Phoebe was a somewhat more prominent character in the novel than she actually was. But yeah, I don't know. It's ultimately, I enjoyed it. I would say I would definitely give it 4 out of 5 stars if I were to rate it again. I think back when I first read it, I did rate it. I gave it like 5 stars. So now I think I could even go as high as like 4.5 stars. Because really the ending, I don't like the ending. I've read other books where I don't like their endings, but I still feel like, it at least kind of makes sense. With this, I don't know, for me, this ending doesn't really make too much sense to me. It kind of felt like, for me, like J.D. Salinger, he didn't know how to end it, so he just wrote this really short last chapter, and was just like, nah, that's it. That's yeah. I don't know. So, I really don't know what else to say. Other than I enjoyed it. If you haven't read The Catcher in the Rye at least once, I do believe everybody should read it at least once. Even if you don't necessarily like Holden Caulfield. I feel like, yeah, it's good. It definitely points out a lot of things, at least from the viewpoint of a teenager, of an adolescent. But I felt like one of the things that I do like, I like the fact that Holden Caulfield, he was quick to say phony, like point out different things that he felt were phony. That, in other words, pointing out that, the absurdities, the fact that most people tend to act phony, to act fake, pretty much, usually without even knowing it, really. Either some know it, but most don't, I guess. I don't know, for me, I've always kind of noticed that too. When I was a teenager, that's pretty much when I started noticing how, oftentimes people will act a certain way that really isn't how they normally act, you know. Like when you're around certain people, you'll act a certain way in order to fit in with those people, to be accepted by a certain group of people. And yeah, I've always felt like it shouldn't be that way. It's, you know, but sadly it is. You know, that's, you know, the kind of reality we live in, the kind of society we live in. You know, if you're not doing everything you can to fit in, then, you know, ultimately you are going to be ostracized and shunned and ridiculed and all that cool stuff. But yeah, you know, ultimately I enjoyed reading this, or rather rereading it, so I would say, you know, I would look forward to rereading it a third time, but not really like anytime soon. Maybe like in another year. I don't know. So yeah, again, I give it 4.5 stars at the most. Yeah. So that'll do it for my review of The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Oh yeah, and one thing too, I also like that there's different points where I like one of the words that Holden uses a lot too is madman. Madman, you know, like I was a madman leaving that place, or, you know, because obviously my name is, you know, my channel name, madmanreads and yeah, I don't know, I just thought I'd point that out, so yeah. So yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. As always, next time, don't forget, keep it real, keep on rocking, and peace.